Hope you all can hear. So we're going to talk about the screening tests and the important one very small important concept regarding that. So whenever in any screening test, you make a table, right? So in any table that you make for biostatistics, you must always remember that vertically you must write what is your diet or whether the screening test result is negative. So suppose let's just take an example of the disease as diabetes and a random blood sugar that you do as a screening test. Then suppose the people who came to me, I was holding a camp for screening, and say 100 people came to me. So a total of 100 people was screened, and out of which 50 were positive and 50 were negative. So the ones who came positive in the screening, I advised them to go for a proper test, which could be a glucose tolerance test or a fasting blood test. And out of which, say, out of 50 the total positive tests, say A number of them came to be diseased. That means they were truly positive. And B number of them were falsely positive. That is, they were tested positive, but they did not have that. Similarly, you can have out of the 50 who were not tested positive during the screening. I will not advise them any further test because they've been screened out. However, over the years, suppose they realize, or say even during some next exam, they turned out to be diabetic, then that means that my test was falsely negative, and this causes a lot of mistrust and a loss of faith in the healthcare system when any test is a false negative. So this is the most troublesome problem when you get a false negative, because you are in a way you're keeping the patient in the dark by telling him you screened out, but he actually has the disease. And D is it can be a true negative, that is he does not have the disease, he does not have diabetes, and he's been screened out. So when we talk about the sensitivity of any screening test, it means your ability to calculate true positives. That means how many of them actually have diabetes and how many of them were screened positive for diabetes. And hence, how you calculate it is the number of true positives A upon the total number of the disease, the number of diabetics A upon C, A plus C into 100, because it's expressed as a percent. Similarly, specificity would be the ability of a test to identify the true negatives. That means, suppose the 100 non-diabetics come to me, and out of which my screening test is able to say 80 of them is showing negative. It's showing negative for 80 of them. That means my specificity is 80%. That is, my screening test is specific for diabetes. It's able to rule out 80 non-diabetics out of 100 non-diabetics. So how I would calculate it is using the D, that is the true negatives, upon the total number of not diseased, that is B plus D into 100 again, because it's expressed as a percent. So if you realize sensitivity and specificity, although they are measures of a screening test, you're actually dividing it by the number of diseased and not diseased. So you're seeing the number of true positives out of all the ones diseased, all positives, all the diseased, and the number of true negatives out of all who are not diseased. So that was sensitivity and specificity. The next two values that we have are the predictive values of a positive test and a negative test, and they are essentially quite the opposite. So, what is the predictivity of a positive test means? Suppose I get a positive test, and what are the chances that the person is actually diseased? So, how well have you been able to predict? And hence, if you want to predict the positive value of a, I'm sorry, the predictive value for positive test, it has to be A, that is the number of true positives, upon A plus B, which is all those who tested positive. So suppose 100 of them tested positive, out of which 80 have diabetes. It means that the predictive value of a positive test is 80%. Similarly, for a predictive value of a negative test, screening test, would be my true negative D upon the total number of people who uh, screened negative, that is D upon C plus D into 100, because again you express it as a percentage. And next is, what is the percentage of false negatives and false positives? So here it would be your a false positive and a false negative. These, and then you divide them by the total number of the diseased or not diseased. So for false negative would be C upon A plus uh, C, and a false positive would be B upon B plus D. So I'm just values because it's confusing sometimes. Sensitivity would be true positives upon those diseased into 100. Specificity would be true negatives upon those not diseased into 100. The predictive value of a positive test would be the true positives upon all positives into 100. The predictive value of a negative test would be the true negatives upon all negatives into 100. Then the percentage of false positives would be false positives upon those not diseased into 100. Whereas the percentage of false negatives would be false negatives upon those diseased into 100. So this is something that people usually get confused with, and this is the only crux of sense of the topic that we need to know. So that was it. Thank you.